the people that were running channel were those that were given it rather than it being the chosen route. If you follow my gist, that is changing. It is changing, and there is now a desire for channel to become just a more well thought of function within these organizations. Very much more so in the US. We're a little bit slower, as I say, over here, but we are getting there, and it should be. It affects so many aspects of the business. People in channel, I always think it's, for me, because it's like a jack of all trades, master of none. You have to have a good understanding of sales and be able to sell. You have to understand marketing and be able to do some of that. You have to have finance. You have to have figures. You have to have numbers, operational technology to underpin it. So channel really touches all of the business, and you have to have an understanding of all of the business.
Hello, welcome, and thank you for tuning into Channel Voices, the podcast for future channel leaders, where we learn the ins and outs of partner ecosystems through casual conversations with channel professionals from a variety of industries, partner types, and geographies. My name is Maciek, and I'm your host. In this episode, I have the pleasure to host a channel pro with very extensive channel experience, who worked as a consultant with many of the top technology vendors like Microsoft and Thales, to name a few. For the past decade, she has been running the Channel Consultants Limited business, and she also runs the Channel Meetup event, which takes place in London on June 23rd and in Palo Alto, California on October 13th this year. It's an exclusive event for channel professionals with talks from specialists and a chance to meet and speak with your peers who deal with the same challenges and opportunities as you. Channel Voices podcast is sponsored by Channel Mechanics, your channel program automation platform. The world's leading vendors use Channel Mechanics platform to ensure ease of doing business for their partner community and channel teams, driving competitive advantage, accelerating revenue, and building partner loyalty. For more info, visit channelmechanics.com. Jacqui Rand, welcome to Channel Voices.
Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be here.
Excellent. Thank you very much for agreeing to do the podcast with me today. Obviously, you have had a very long career in the channel. You have been, I believe, a consultant within the channel for vendors for over 20 years.
Yeah, I dread to think how long it is, actually. Pretty much my whole career. I have worked as a consultant. Even 10-year tenure with Microsoft, I was a consultant to them, not a full-time employee, although I was pretty much full-time there. So yes, my entire career virtually, I have acted as a consultant to technology companies, all in the channel.
Wonderful. So the first question that I'm thinking of straight off the bat is, because of your vast experience in consulting with technology companies when it comes to their channel, can you give us maybe a peek of the most common requests that you get from the vendors when they approach you for channel consultancy services?
It varies so much. Given that I've worked, as I said, for companies like Microsoft and Thales, and then also very small ISVs, there is no one size fits all. It's very much dependent upon the individual requirements. So a smaller ISV may be wanting to build a channel program, a channel strategy, and therefore you're looking at all aspects of the way in which they go to market through a channel. So developing a program, putting an infrastructure in place, internal readiness, etc. And then the larger organization, you may be looking at one piece of the channel program, such as the rewards or the MDF, or an element of, the financial remuneration, and how does that compare to others in the industry. So it really, really depends. There isn't kind of a single common thread, although actually, there is. The common thread actually that I pick up on is that I always go and talk to their partners. If they've got any, I will go and talk to their partners. And that's a kind of way to audit how that organization is doing, and get sort of under the covers. Often partners will be much more candid with a sort of an independent third party who may kind of report in aggregate. And so, you can find the data points and the anecdotal that will help steer the project going forward. So I guess that's the common thread. Actually talk to the partners and how their experience of working with that vendor.
Okay. And when you speak to the partners, do you discover what their experience is like working with that given vendor at that given time, or also maybe what is it that they wish that the vendor was doing?
Absolutely. It's usually a question of what's good and what can be improved. It's always really nice to put some positivity in there, for the vendor. If you're consulting to them, you're doing something really well and they really love your products, or, the people are really good at building relationships, but perhaps your margins could be better, which is, a common theme. Often, obviously partners want to make more money, or the whole commercial piece needs to be looked at. So it is very much about asking them and understanding the partner's business. Very often a vendor will have, a look at their partners as a pipeline, and not always as a proper business relationship, which is the way it should be looked at. So understanding the partner's business and the challenges that they're sort of undergoing helps you find a way to make that vendor more relevant for them and easier to do business with, and so forth. So you're looking for ways to improve the way in which the vendor can work with those partners, and also perhaps get a bit of a feel for what the competitors are doing. They're a great source of understanding of what's going on in the marketplace. Perhaps, one of the vendor's competitors has just put a really cool promotion together, and that may be what's affecting your sales. So understanding some of that is always good. So yeah, a lot more than just, what could be improved, but also a good deal of market information from partners.
Fantastic. And in the last episode, I spoke with Kenneth Fox, the CEO of Channel Mechanics. Mm-hmm. He mentioned, and so you said it just earlier on that, some of the parts when you come in to look at, they could be, a specific program within their overarching channel program, which could be MDF, it could be incentives, you name it, right?
Yes.
And throughout the conversation with Kenneth, he really honed in on the subject of automation, and that it is an absolute must today for any vendor that goes to the market via the channel. Do you share the same view? Do you see that popping up?
Yeah, 100%. Now, with the caveat that if you've only got two partners, you're probably okay. But in terms of if you're wanting to scale, absolutely automation, and enabling partners to self-serve for the humdrum, the sort of just the fetching and carrying and finding collateral and learning journeys and so forth. So automation for sure for the day-to-day repetitive tasks, so that the vendors can actually focus on building the relationships with the partners and bringing value. So yeah, automation is very much a theme, and it's something I do a lot of, which is helping vendors find the right automation platform for them. And it may well be Channel Mechanics, it could be one of the others, depending on their particular requirements. And so finding out how they want to work with their partners, and then what they need from an automation perspective to, as I say, make them really easy to do business with. That's the sort of the fundamental first principle. Are you easy to do business with? Is the sort of transaction side of things slick and easy? And so, yeah, always automation. It needs to be there for any vendor that's looking to scale, for sure.
Right. And so you mentioned, obviously, if you have only two partners, you're not scaling yet. You're maybe starting to build a channel. So maybe automation is not the most important thing to be looking at that stage. So when do you think vendors should be looking at introducing automation into their channel?
So it's a how long is a piece of string? Sorry to be so vague, but actually even the analogy of two partners, actually, if they're really big, if they're like an Accenture or a Deloitte or, a really large systems integration business with multiple offices and lots of different people in both sales and marketing, you are going to need an automation platform so that you can enable them to self-serve, get the training, or access collaterals and sales demo documents and marketing information, etc. So less about the number of partners, although that often is a factor, but it's the number of people that you need to be supplying with the standard information and enabling them to do perhaps deal registrations and so forth. So it's a bit of a tough one to say, is there a tipping point?
Right.
I'm guessing, it's really a question of when your staff can't handle the day to day and are sending multiple emails with brochures instead of enabling partners to self-serve. I think that would be the criteria rather than necessarily the number of partners.
Understood. And thank you for clarifying that. And in terms of kind of, looking for the right type of automation pieces, and how you would go around introducing automation into the channel, is there any best practice that you would typically go by or suggest to a vendor?
I think having there's a number of things there. Firstly, you need to understand what it is that you need and that you want, and again, ask your partners, what's good about you coming on our portal and what's bad. You often find there's a lot of homegrown portals because we're in the tech industry. A lot of people think they can build it themselves. And yet there are, an awful lot that have been purpose built out there that are better. So, asking your partners and getting a feel for, again, on the automation side, what can be improved can be really helpful. In terms of best practice, so yes, ask your partners, ask your internal teams, because it needs to be useful for them. They need to have visibility of performance. They need to be able to easily administer it. And also there is a certain sort of a different size of platforms out there, best of breed, individual solutions versus platforms. And it really just depends on what it is that vendor is looking for. It could be a point solution for through channel marketing automation, and there are solutions that do just that. And then there are platforms that do that as part of their solution. So it's understanding your requirements by talking to your partners, talking internally, making sure you've got kind of a requirements document, and then asking for information from potential vendors and looking at demos, and sharing that with a core team internally so that you can really compare one to another and see which one is going to kind of come out on top. It's like any, system analysis and decision. Trying to do it in isolation on your own is probably not the best idea. I do a lot of this, so having an independent consultant can be really helpful, because you can just sort of bounce ideas off, and it's a good sanity check. You don't have any internal investment then, having that outside view of somebody perhaps internally that built the portal. Often it's the MD in some of these places, so having that external view can sometimes lend weight to the argument to say, no, that's got to change, which internally staff may not be quite prepared to do. So yes, there's a number of ways to look at it, and that's as I say, what I spend a lot of my time doing.
Perfect. And you mentioned there, internal teams, and channel team being, I suppose, one of those teams that are involved in such an endeavor to introduce automation. Mm-hmm. From the conversations that I am having pretty much on daily basis with channel leaders, channel sales directors, etc., it seems to me that there is somewhat a common theme going through those tech organizations when it comes to their channel teams, and they're typically one of the smaller teams when it's if you were to compare the teams internally. Why is it the case, do you think?
It's interesting. I was having this discussion with somebody that I'm kind of mentoring and helping, who's come from a marketing background and is now in a channel marketing role, and so really trying to get to grips with the whole kind of channel thing. And I was saying, it's really interesting if you go to a cocktail party and you're an accountant or you're a lawyer, or you're in technology, you're a software developer, or so many other things. It's very easy. People go, yep, fine, I get that, that's interesting, or not, whatever. You say you're in channel and they glaze over. People do not understand what channel is, even though I think it's something like 75% of global trade flows through a channel of sorts. And so channel is not necessarily recognized as a function within an organization, or it's slow to be recognized. Now, I think the US is ahead of us on this, without a doubt. We are tracking slightly behind in the UK. And there are now in the US, there are channel chiefs, there are sort of community managers, channel ecosystem managers, and so forth. So, they are ahead of the curve there. Over here, not so much. We all understand sales, we understand marketing. Channel, not as much. And it goes right back through to, university or academies and learning. There's sales courses and there's marketing diplomas and so forth. But it's very limited in terms of the whole kind of channel piece. It's not something you go and study, or it certainly wasn't in my day. I don't think there is any now. The Channel Institute is a great organization. They do channel courses, but there are a plethora that do marketing and sales. I think the Channel Institute is one of the very few that I know that do channel. So yes, there is a lack of focus in organizations, and the people that were running channel were those that were given it rather than it being the chosen route. If you follow my gist, that is changing. It is changing, and there is now a desire for channel to become just a more well thought of function within these organizations. Very much more so in the US. We're a little bit slower, as I say, over here, but we are getting there, and it should be. It affects so many aspects of the business. People in channel, I always think it's, for me, because it's like a jack of all trades, master of none. You have to have a good understanding of sales and be able to sell. You have to understand marketing and be able to do some of that. You have to have finance. You have to have figures. You have to have numbers, operational technology to underpin it. So channel really touches all of the business, and you have to have an understanding of all of the business. But in terms of it being seen as a kind of C-level role, we're not quite there in the UK. They're getting there in the US, but we don't have quite the same high standing, shall we say, level pegging with a sort of sales director and a CMO and CEO, etc. The channel chief has not really emerged over here in the UK yet.
Right. And throughout some of the conversations that I'm having on daily basis, is I hear that quite a bit, that there is shortage of talent coming into the channel teams. And given obviously the fact that channel isn't really part of any university curriculum.
Yeah.
So where and how can vendors actually attract talent into their channel teams? What's your view on that?
A very popular route is marketing. Because you need to have marketing skills to do a channel role, as I said. So that is often the route. And as I say, this particular person I'm mentoring has very much come from that route. It's interesting. I mean, there is a definite lack of, or there is a skills shortage or talent shortage in technology right now anyway. And this is not just in the UK, it's this globally. And so there are, a lot of, there's more jobs than there are people. And so we have to look beyond channel to go and find people, you're right, that will fill those channel roles. And it is a blend of skills. It is a blend of sales and marketing and operational. So good project managers often can become good within the channel because they've got that mix of skills. They're used to liaising with stakeholders and systems architects and other teams and pulling them all together. So I think a good project manager can actually is a good source for channel roles and marketing as well. You have to have an understanding of marketing, although it then is much more diverse when you get to channel because you're looking at to partner marketing and through partner marketing. So it becomes more complex. But yeah, I think you need that organizational skills. So real jack of all trades. So some, business skills, obviously. So, a DBA, a degree in business admin, that's a fairly good rounded kind of, if you're looking for somebody fresh out of uni, that degree in business administration is a good, as I say, jack of all trades, that would be good for channel as well. So that would be my steer: project management, project leads, and marketing, and those that have done DBA.
Right. So you mentioned quite a few roles or maybe trades that have good potential of becoming a good member of a channel team, be it on the marketing side or on the sales side. From my experience, what I have seen throughout my career, a lot of people from sales, particularly from the more strategic type of direct sales, they go into the channel roles because they used to manage those very, very big type of customers, the key accounts per se, and it somewhat resembles managing a channel partner where you have to understand a lot of moving parts. So that's what I've seen, kind of the quickest route.
Yeah, I hate to say, but I think that is often a big mistake, because somebody who is motivated and driven and is in sales, they're a different beast to somebody in channel. So I would liken it to the kind of, a salesperson with an enterprise account is very much hunter-gatherer, going out there, finding, new business, and they get a kick out of delivering that new customer to the business. That's what drives them. That's what motivates them. That's what they're good at. A channel account manager, a CAM, they are all about, they're much more of a farmer. So you've got the hunter-gatherer versus farmer. So you've got somebody who's really got to build relationships with those channel partners and be able to liaise with all the different teams within that channel partner. So the marketing teams, the sales teams, etc. And it is very much more it's a different beast in my mind. And I think going and getting your best salespeople and putting them in channel roles is not always a good idea.
Right. So in terms of, I suppose, the top 3 tips for anyone currently hiring for channel teams, what kind of tips would you give anyone like that?
Golly, I think it's really hard at the moment. As I say, I know there's a skills shortage throughout. I tell you what, in terms of a tip, what I did was I took on a couple of guys through the government Kickstart scheme. So they were recent graduates, and due to COVID, they were really struggling. And so to find work, they couldn't interview. It was very tough. And so I took them on, and it's been really successful. So that was the government scheme whereby they were funded by the government for 6 months for 25 hours a week. And then I soon bumped them up to 40 hours a week. And then I've taken them on full time after their 6-month period. It was great. I mean, it was risk-free for me, risk-free for them. They got, something on their CV, and the government paid for half of them. So, what's not to like? And they're great, really enthusiastic. And because of the fact that they were on the government Kickstart scheme, I hate to say it, but, their salary expectations were minimum wage.
Right.
So, that was, huge for me in a small business. You don't want to start paying huge salaries for young talent, but, you want to then nurture them and keep them and mentor them and all of that good stuff. But right out the gates, before you know whether they're going to be any good, paying big salaries is tough. So it was an excellent way to bring them into the industry, and it's been good for both of us, me and them. So yeah, that would be a tip. Use the government schemes. I mean, they've got an apprenticeship scheme now as well. And also there's a lot of those kind of schemes by some of the big IT vendors like Microsoft. I mean, they've got huge resources to be able to help you find talent, and they provide the resources to nurture that talent and put those people on learning journeys, whether that's from a technical perspective of the Microsoft products or other vendors of a similar ilk. So yeah, look out for those vendor programs where they've got academies and talent spotting, talent speed dating, and a whole sort of plethora of resources and ways to bring people into the channel business.
Lovely, thank you. And just from your experience, I suppose, from how when you took the two guys on out of that government program,
Mm-hmm.
what was their learning curve when it came to understanding channel?
Steep. Yep, no, you're quite right. It was very tough because also, let's face it, they didn't have any, kind of work experience either, really. Not in the business world. They've both been doing kind of odd jobs elsewhere, where they could. So learning how to use Office properly, so they can go from an email to creating a Teams meeting to recording it to all of those sorts of skills. So had to kind of give them some of that help to get them underway. But you see, younger talent, they're so digitally savvy. It didn't take long, and so that was great. And I have provided training and also kind of mentoring, the shadow sort of concept, which I think is really important. So
Yes.
giving them the opportunity to be on a project that was perhaps, something they wouldn't in a larger organization, and just saying, right, I want you to just shadow me, listen to what I'm doing. This is the methodology. This is how we're going to approach this, and work with them, send them off to do a bit of research, then see the contribution in the project, et cetera, et cetera. So enabling them to shadow a project from start to finish is, I think, hugely useful, because that gives them that project management skills, it gives them the marketing, it gives them the sales, it gives them channel. So again, you're giving them the whole raft of experience by enabling them to look over your shoulder through an entire project.
And on the subject of gaining knowledge and becoming proficient when it comes to understanding the channel, and I know it was for you, it was quite some time ago, but can you recall, or now thinking backwards, can you think of the one thing that you wish you knew before you started your career in channel?
I wish I'd known what VAR stood for. And this is back in the 80s, okay? This is back in the 80s. This is a donkey's years ago. And so I've now got FAQs, and I go, all my clients, I say, have you got FAQs? Put them on your website, because it's like, why wouldn't you? Because just giving people the acronyms. Don't forget, I spent 10 years with Microsoft, who are acronym, silly. Everything is an acronym. And it's all designed to baffle people and whatever. So yes, that was one, literally back in the 80s. And when you're sort of young and starting out and impressionable, you don't want to ask, because people are using it regularly and you really ought to know. But never be afraid to ask. Always ask, what do you mean by, what is a value-added reseller, in fact? But, there are so many acronyms out there. You should never be afraid to ask, can I just check? What is that? That would be my guide.
Perfect. Thank you. And I believe Channel Mechanics has actually a blog post on channel terms. I'll link it
link that.
in the
That
description
really
for
good.
anyone who's new, who's listening for the first time maybe, and was wondering also what the VAR stood for.
Yeah.
I'll link it so you can look it up.
Excellent. No, good for them. It's always valuable to have those because there are so many. So, yep, definitely a good idea.
Excellent. And Jacqui, moving away a little bit from the channel, I know you're working on some side projects. Would you like to give us a bit of an introduction to what you're doing?
Sadly, I don't think it's quite as interesting as it sounds. I've got a number of different strands to the business. So I also have the channel meetup. So it is all channel related, actually. So I have a series of face-to-face meetings for for channel marketing and sales professionals to attend. There's one in the UK on the 23rd of June, and there's one in the US on the 13th of October in Palo Alto. So those are kind of interactive sessions where people come about, small, private, about 100 delegates, that's all, where we have a couple of speakers with sort of keynote address around data. So they've got some good context. And then we have debates and table discussions and all sorts. And those are facilitated by my lovely sponsors. And really it's enabling channel professionals to come together, peer-to-peer learning. It's fantastic. So that's one side of it. I'm also doing a series of roundtables. So working with the IAMCP, Microsoft roundtables, asking the partners their opinions around elements of their program. And that's giving me a great deal of insight. So yeah, I get involved in lots of different things.
I think you also mentioned a series of video podcasts that you're going to be doing.
Yes. So with the Learning Library TV, I'm doing a series of called The Selection. And The Selection is all about interviewing channel professionals to see why they and their company should be selected. So it's very much sort of hopefully stealing some of the thunder from The Apprentice. So why would that company be selected, or why would they be hired? So it's looking at channel automation solutions and some distribution. So sort of those right in the middle of the channel that vendors would look to hire or select, and those companies giving a justification. What is their compelling proposition and why should they be hired? And also part of that is around the culture of that business. Would it fit? So it's interesting, and it's rather tongue in cheek, but really much more sort of giving those companies an opportunity to showcase why they should be selected, which I think is quite different.
Very interesting. We'll link also to this once that comes
Perfect.
out.
Thank you. Yes.
So everyone can go and have a quick look at who is it that you're interviewing. Jacqui, thank you so much for coming onto the Channel Voices podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
No problem. It's been very interesting. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap for this episode. I do hope you found it valuable, and if you did, please make sure to subscribe and leave a review. You can also follow Channel Voices Podcast on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook, or just visit channelvoices.com where you can send me a message or leave a voicemail. All of the links are listed in the show notes, and once again, I appreciate you tuning in today. Until next time.